Welcome back to another tabletop review. Today we'll be taking a look at the Mossberg 500 pump action shotgun. Here we have the field model all-purpose Mossberg 500AR 12 gauge pump action shotgun. Simple but effective. After over 50 years and over 10 million sold, the Mossberg 500 is the only pump action shotgun to be declared MilSpec. In a word, that translates to reliability. True, as many of you will point out, its design is about 60 years old, but it remains one of the most versatile and reliable shotgun platforms available, and the list of options offered for the 500 should fill just about any use you can imagine. As such, the Mossberg 500 has been presented in a wide range of models to fit every application and every user, from household to law agencies to military applications worldwide. Whether hunting fields or battlefields, the Mossberg 500 may well be the most recognizable shotgun in the world. I picked this one up used at a local gun store a few months ago. It had a price tag of $300. After some negotiations, I took it home for $235 out the door. New ones were selling for about $400, so I thought it was a fair price. A good question might be, other than a good price, why would I buy a pump action shotgun? Well, of course, I always have wanted one. I've already got a Mossberg 590 Shockwave for home defense, and I've got an old 410 single shot, 2 semi-automatics, and a couple of over-under shotguns that I've used for trap and sporting clay shootings for years. But I won't take them out if the weather looks bad. They're just too nice. Actually, I wanted something I didn't feel I needed to baby. I wanted something functional, a workhorse shotgun, if you will. Something I wouldn't worry about banging around. This gun already has signs of hard use and a little abuse, but it's a simple, basic, reliable, low-budget gun that would be a perfect backup gun, just in case. This Mossberg 500 seemed to fill that need nicely. Now, before we go any further, let's make sure this gun is cleared first. And by the way, if you enjoy this review, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. The Mossberg company has been in business since just after World War I. The Mossberg Model 500 pump-action shotguns was originally designed and marketed in 1962. Key to the 500's popularity was its well-balanced combination of affordability and quality, as well as surprisingly large number of barrel and stock options. But the Model 500 also owes a good share of its popularity to its military and police service. The 500 was first utilized in 1979 by all major branches of the U.S. Armed Forces. Responding to the military's request for increased ammunition capacity and other modifications resulted in the development of the Model 590 shotgun, a variant of the Model 500 that was adopted by the military in 1987. Now, you've got to admit, that's pretty cool. And here's the thing, after 60 years, the Mossberg Model 500 is still in production. This particular gun is obviously one of the earlier 500 field models, but the appearance of this shotgun was so popular that Mossberg actually brought back the look with the Mossberg 500 Retrograve a few years ago, featuring the walnut furniture. This is where I'll usually talk a little bit about U.S. movies in which the firearm can be seen. In the case of the Mossberg 500, a brief search turns up a big bunch of movies and TV episodes. Maybe even more Mossberg 500s shown than Glocks, if you can believe that, so I'll only point out two. The first is the 2003 film Bad Santa with Billy Bob Thornton as the outrageous Willie Soak. And my other example is the 2012 British zombie comedy film Cockneys vs. Zombies. Okay, it's not a U.S. film, but I just had to mention it. I mean, what would shotguns be without zombies? As for specs, this is Mossberg's hunting all-purpose field model 12-gauge pump-action shotgun. It's chambered for 3-inch shells. Capacity is 5+1. The barrel finish is blued. The wood is basic stained birch, and this one has the typical 1980s white spacers. There's good checkering on the grip and forend. There's a brown recoil pad on the stock for cushioning. The barrel is ventilated rib. Barrel length is 28 inches. The barrel is modified choke. Newer versions come with threaded AccuChoke tubes. There's a small bead forward sight. Newer versions will have dual bead sights. Trigger pull is 5.5 pounds. Length of pull is 13.9 inches. Overall length 47.5 inches. Weight is 7.5 pounds. This is one of those few video reviews where I won't be showing range activity. It's the dead of winter here, and it's really been rather unpleasant out there for days. And really, shotguns are shotguns. Other than demonstrating my ability or lack thereof to hit clays, you load them, point them, pull the trigger, and they go boom. But my son and I have had this Mossberg 500 to a sporting clay range enough times to allow me to just tell you about our experiences. And yes, I know that the pump action shotgun may not be ideal for shooting clays because racking it may make target acquisition a little more difficult. But the Mossberg 500 can be found at clay ranges across the country. And pump action shotguns are easy to use, offer a larger capacity than traditional double-barreled shotguns, and can provide better reliability than a semi-auto. In fact, I've watched professionals easily and consistently break 3 clays on the fly in under 2 seconds. Yep, with a pump action Mossberg 500 like this one. First of all, keep in mind that the Mossberg 500 is a budget-friendly basic shotgun. As such, it's not likely to be the best sporting shotgun you'll ever shoulder. Still, the Mossberg 500 isn't likely to disappoint you either for what it costs. That was certainly our experience. Loading shells was smooth and the pumping action was positive, nice and solid. Everything worked as it should. We liked the action release. While not refined, the gun has a good feel to it. Shootability was fine, but the gun lacks some of the finesse found on more refined bird guns. Unfortunately, I'm no expert and neither is my son, so I can't reflect any more than our own personal experiences. Neither of us is expert shot either, although my son is certainly the better shot. So all I can say is we seem to do as well with this shotgun as any other. Both my son and I agreed that for the money, regardless of the Mossberg's lack of bells and whistles or perhaps sophistication, the 500 still got the job done and did so very well. We seem to do just fine with the bead sight, although this one only has the front bead. Of course, newer ones have dual beads, which I would prefer. Trigger pull is about 5.5 pounds. It's an okay trigger, not great, but good enough. My son likes a button safety, but personally, I've never been a big fan of trigger guard button safety, so I like the Mossberg's tang safety. Also, I'll admit that I've developed some bad habits with my semi-automatics and over-under shotguns, so occasionally I'll forget to pump the gun between shots. Both of us felt the Mossberg's kick was a little harsher compared to our other shotguns using our typical Federal or Winchester loads. But otherwise, my son and I agreed that the gun was comfortable enough with manageable recoil. A good working shotgun. Typically I'd cover pros and cons here, but I feel like I've already done that. Basically, for the money, it's really hard to come up with realistic cons other than this one seems to have a hard-hitting recoil. And I don't think this original recoil pad helps. Perhaps the best feeling and best performance shotgun in my experience was a $3,600 over-under 12 gauge I had the chance to shoot a couple of years ago. It was recommended by a professional who pointed out that it had the right length of pull, the right comb height, the right stock cast for me personally. Oh sure, it was great, but just not realistic for me. In comparison, the Mossberg 500 is budget friendly, as reliable as you can get, and a good working all-round shotgun. I may miss a clay now and then with it, but I think I can live with that. And given the vast variety of formats available, you should be able to find a combination of stocks and barrels to meet your needs. If the objective is to bring down game or break clays, I think you'll find that the Mossberg 500 is certainly up to the task for a price that will leave you with cash left over for shells. As for disassembly, with the safety on, begin by checking that the gun is cleared. Depress the action lock lever behind and to the left of the trigger housing. Bring the fore end back to open and inspect the chamber, elevator, and magazine tube to make sure the gun is empty. Okay, let's start with removing the barrel. Bring the bolt to the midway point and check that the bolt is in the correct position halfway in the ejection port, like this. Now unscrew the magazine tube nut until it's free. On this old model, it does not come off. Then pull the barrel forward off the receiver. Now we'll remove the trigger assembly by drifting out this pin on the side of the receiver. Remove the trigger assembly by pulling upward at the back, then out and free of the receiver. Make sure the trigger isn't pulled during removal. Further disassembly of the trigger assembly is not recommended by the factory and should not be required for routine cleaning and maintenance. Next, we'll remove the cartridge interrupter. It's a bar running on the inside of the receiver here. There's an indent pin on the bar that sits in this hole on the side here. If we push it in, the bar will become free and we can lift it out of the receiver. On the other side, we'll see another bar that is the cartridge stop. Just pry it over from the side a little. It'll fall away and then we can remove it from the receiver. Now we can remove the bolt slide. The bolt slide sits on the bolt. To remove it, the edges need to be aligned with the slot cuts into the side of the receiver, like this. Once aligned, we can lift the bolt slide freely straight up and out of the receiver. Now we can remove the bolt by pushing it forward toward the front and out the receiver. Now the elevator can be removed by pulling the end forward and up and squeezing the unit together, which will free the ends and you can remove it from the receiver. With that, the forend is now free to be removed from the receiver as well, and that's it. Now what you should have are these parts: the barrel, the trigger assembly pin, the trigger assembly, the cartridge interrupter, the cartridge stop, the bolt slide, the bolt, the elevator, the forend, and the receiver. After cleaning, your next step will be to put it all back together. Reassembly is in reverse order. Keep in mind that this is an older Mossberg 500, so yours may look just a little different, although the steps here are basically the same. And there are some tricky points here, but I'll give special attention to them as we go. Also be aware that the hammer must be in the full cock position for reinsertion of the trigger assembly, and that the safety must be on the on position to reinstall the bolt assembly. Let's begin with returning the forend. Now let's take a moment to note how the bolt and the bolt slide go together. Return the elevator. Note that the receiver holes are toward the top of the receiver. Return the bolt to the receiver. Return the bolt slide. Again, let's take a moment to note that the notch on the slide needs to match up with the protrusion on the action slide tube assembly arm. The bolt slide will sit on top of the bolt, but the tube assembly arm protrusion and the notch have to align. Also remember that the edges of the bolt slide need to fit between the slot cuts in the sides of the receiver. Once aligned, we can drop the bolt slide down into the receiver on top of the bolt. Move the forend a little and you'll see the arm move. Move it back and forth until you align the two together. Then the bolt slide will sit onto the bolt properly. Replace the cartridge stop to the left side of the receiver. Looking down, it'll be on the right. And hold in place or it will probably fall out. If it won't sit flush, move it forward just a little. Replace the cartridge interrupter with its indent pin through the hole on the receiver. Replace the trigger assembly by inserting the forward end into the receiver first and rocking the unit down. Hold in place and reinsert the trigger assembly pin. Now return the barrel and screw down the magazine tube nut. And test for function, and that's it. As for price, I think it's interesting that I don't see many used Mossberg 500s for sale in my area. I've been told it's because people just hang on to them. While you don't get much money in trade, they weren't that much to buy in the first place. Today, the Mossberg 500 field model has a manufacturer's suggested retail price of $518, but today's actual prices are closer to about $470, and used ones will sell for an average of about $320, with trade-in values around $300. Also, be aware that you'll find a lot of variation in models and prices. For example, a field grade 12-gauge retro model will run about $450 today, but there are always sales. After searching for almost 2 years, my son-in-law just bought a new 500 field model for $299, so deals can be found. If you see a used one for around $275, that might be a good price, but check out what a new one might cost you. Now, that being said, an important bit of information to know is that while the cost of a new Mossberg 500 has risen about $20 since last year, the cost of a used Mossberg 500 has increased by about $44, or more than twice that of a new one. That may just be a reflection of there being fewer used ones in the market, but still good to know. Now, before we end today's video, I'd like to remind you, if you haven't already, be sure to like, share, and subscribe down below. And thanks for watching. In summary, the Mossberg 500 is arguably the most popular shotgun ever made. Affordable, no frills, easy to use, highly reliable, and available in a huge variety of formats, the Mossberg 500's appeal is legendary. It's certainly a workhorse shotgun, but it's also a classic, dependable pump shotgun that has stood the test of time. So after a few months with this gun, what do I think of this old all-purpose field model Mossberg 500AR? First of all, I really like what I paid for the gun. I also like that I don't have to baby this shotgun, which means I actually will use it more frequently. And I like its looks. The blue steel of the barrel and the receiver offer an attractive contrast against the wood stock and forend. I like the feel and the sound of the positive pumping action. It feels and sounds like a serious shotgun that means business. And I like when I'm surrounded by sporting clay shooters with their expensive over-under beauties, and here I am, doing almost as well as they are with my cheap old Mossberg. Makes me smile. The recoil pad on the stock doesn't really provide much cushioning, so I may add a better pad in the future. And while it doesn't really matter as much for hunting, performance with sporting clays could be improved a bit with fine-tuning this gun to better fit me. Sure, but quite frankly, I'm just not that motivated. And I seem to do more than just all right with it as it is, so I can't complain. Are there better shotguns out there? Oh sure, I even own a couple myself, but let's face it, there aren't many guns that carry such a notable reputation as the Mossberg 500. So for now, I'm just having fun with this popular classic. Any weapon you carry is better than the one you left at home. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll be back for my next tabletop review. Until next time, stay safe.